With NATO being the bedrock of transatlantic security and the European Union being the bedrock of transatlantic cooperation in all matters civilian, the momentum has arrived for a new opening. An opening of strategic cooperation between the United States, NATO, and the European Union that will lead the allies to maintain technological edge in security. The debate is just beginning and will be the subject of our first panel discussion titled Transatlantic Alliance Click Refresh, Making Technology Cooperation Central to Our Shared Democratic Future. It is my great pleasure to introduce and welcome Ms. Miapetra Kumpula-Natri, Vice Chair of the Delegation for Relations with the United States, the European Parliament, Ms. Joanneke Balfoort, Director for Security and Defense Policy at the European External Action Service, Professor Deeph Chana, Chair of the EDT's NATO's Advisory Group, Professor of Practice at the Imperial College Business School, and co-director of the Institute for Security Science and Technology. Professor Philip Lark, Program Director of the George Marshall European Center for Security Studies. Ms. Marta Poślad, Head of CE and Transatlantic Public Policy at Google, and as the host of the discussion, Ms. Beyza Unal, Deputy Director, International Security Program at Chatham House. Beyza, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I would like to say a few words at the very beginning. I do hope that you all had the chance to listen to the previous keynote speakers, as they have done a fantastic overview of the threats posed by emerging and disruptive technologies, and also NATO's approaches and activities in these areas. I specifically like the phrase of the online is the front line, and I think that is the point that where we are going to take today in this panel discussion. To address in which areas such cooperation in a way already exists within NATO and EU, and to identify new areas of cooperation and to address some of the challenges that exist in this framework, we have 5 speakers today with me. I think you need to all wish me good luck on this, because I will be juggling in the moderating, because we have this excellent panel of experts here. I would like to first start with Joanneke, if I can. Can you, Joanneke, please give us an overall picture of what type of initiatives exist within the transatlantic context, and how do these initiatives, in a way, contribute to the rules-based order and to multilateralism? Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on this important. And I was start listening also to the previous speakers, because a lot what they have been saying, I will be echoing in a sense. But let me just start with the topic of the transatlantic relations. I think the United States for us is one of the most strategic partners, and one of the key priorities for engagement with the US is of course the digital domain, and this was highlighted in the joint communication called New EU-US Agenda for Global Change. And what we see is a growing convergence of views on tech governance on both sides of the Atlantic, and we face common challenges related to critical infrastructure issues like 5G, 6G, or cybersecurity assets. And this is all essential for our security, sovereignty, and prosperity, but also data technologies and the role of online platforms. And that's why we propose to join forces as tech allies to shape technologies, their use, and regulatory environment. But coming back also to the defense aspects, we see that those emerging technologies have a growing impact on our security and defense, and creating both opportunities and challenges. And what we see, and the previous speaker also mentioned, that civilian technologies are increasingly weaponized and misused for political and ideological purposes, jeopardizing our democracy, economy, and national security, and harming human rights and fundamental freedoms. We see disinformation and foreign interference activities as continued malicious cyber activities, and they are used by state and non-state actors to undermine our democracies. And in order to withstand this competition and protect our security, we need to be at the forefront of technological progress, both foreign and military technologies. And given this increasing dual-use nature of technology, which is especially true with regard to technologies such as quantum computing, AI, and machine learning, a strong cooperation between public, private, civilian, and military actors is essential. And this all was well captured in the recent European Council statement on security in defense. And there it was also an example of how the EU is mobilizing its wide toolbox to tackle the different challenges. And over the recent years, we see that the EU has put in place different building blocks. At a strategic level, we've adopted a number of initiatives, the joint 2020 cybersecurity strategy, with the aim of boosting our resilience and strengthening the EU policies. We've worked on improving our situational awareness, helping us to assess and address security threats related to new technologies. We're currently working on a strategic compass, but we see also we have doing hybrid risk assessment surveys. We do 5G coordinated risk assessments, and we use the EU cyber diplomacy toolbox. And we've plotted the way forward on developing technologies and capabilities, including through instruments such as coordinated annual review of defense, the permanent structured cooperation, European Defence Fund, and the action plan on synergies between civil defense and space industries. Because we have to look between this cross-fertilization between defense and civil research. This is not new, but it's a new endeavor for the European Union. Because in this new 2021-2027 period, the EU will, for the first time, have significant defense funding available. And this means that we can now scale up our support to critical technologies across civil defense and space applications by creating synergies between EU programs. We will have the European Defence Fund, the EU Space Programme, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, the Connecting Europe Facility, and the internal security. And we need to these capabilities and new technologies such as drones, satellite imagery, secure communication. And we need this for our own security, but also to the benefit of our EU missions and operations abroad. And what I also would like to highlight is the work done on promoting our vision and values of democracy, human rights, and fundamental freedoms, and safeguarding the rules-based international order. Together with member states, we've been fully engaged in multilateral discussions on cyber issues and, for example, also on lethal autonomous weapon system. Outreach, coalition building, and dialogue with partners, including, of course, the NATO, are crucial elements. But there are many challenges ahead of us, and we need to build further on this complementarity between civilian, dual, and military aspects of technologies. Further strengthening our civilian-military cooperation, mainstreaming forward-looking geostrategic perspective into our policies, building strategic partnerships, promoting our approaches on 5G, AI, cybersecurity, or the responsible use of technology in military applications, and safeguarding robust rules-based international order as a bedrock of our engagement. And I've said it before, but I will say it again. For all this, a strong cooperation between public and private and civilian and military actors is a must. And in all this, we should promote a multilateral response to these global challenges. We stand ready to cooperate further with NATO and US and other allies on these issues. And this discussion today will help us to bring more strategic focus in our dialogue and cooperation. Thank you very much. Back to you.
good segue to Miapetra, if I may. Miapetra, what are the existing threats that you see when it comes to the competition and rivalry within emerging and disruptive technology space? And in which areas do you see the development of rules and norms in transatlantic cooperation? Over to you.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. I think at the moment the discussions around the technologies are very, very active in the European Parliament that I represent here. We have a lot of perspectives, one of them being, of course, the threats and security, but at the same time, we look at the innovations, market rules, privacy, human rights, workers' rights, traditional security, of course, super threats, and how it is dealt with with the democracies. And IDA, Special Committee on AI, was also established to have a common forum for MEPs across the different committees to think together for the technologies such as AI, but we know it is just one part of the whole big picture. So I see the emerging and disrupting technologies are becoming the battleground over the global technological leadership with profound economies and security implications. It used to be the case that military innovations drove then later civilian ones, but the situation with the many technologies now is vice versa. Who has the best know-how on AI and quantum computing, for example, will not only to be developed for the consumer products and services of the future, but will get an edge military. If you look around, we can see that President Xi personally in China oversees the program of civil-military fusion, whereby civilian technologies are developed for military use. And in its 5-year plan, China has decided to focus strongly on pursuing global leadership and strategic autonomy in AI and 6 other high-tech sectors. And China has already overtaken EU in the research and development spending and probably will soon overtake US. So I think for the establishing global norms to prohibit development of most extreme military applications of EDT is important. That is very important. But then for the rest, from the more technological I see that there will be a fierce competition on the technologies as well. And how will we as European Union or how will US remain competitive and retain the technological leadership in the democracies based on our shared values? So I think the momentum is now to start with the new US administration and then the EU already 1.5 years, the beginning to showing also the more global leadership based on the democracy and values we have. I welcome new US administration to be more active on the international structures that we do have, and I personally want to see also EU being even more active. You name UN, OECD, ITU, WIPO, a lot of issues that are getting close to the new technologies, but then carry on global agreements. But then on the competition side, I think there is a momentum to build the new agreement in US and EU. As the joint communication from last year, what was proposed for the new US administration by the Commission was an agreement for idea for the new EU-US agenda for global change. And we have read that the White House recently called for close technological cooperation amongst democracies in its interim national security guidance. So I see the clear political will on the both sides. So what can we do if there is a political will? There should be an idea of developing an innovative transatlantic markets for EDT, because we are market economies where still we need a strong political participation. I wish I didn't need to see much of a decoupling strategies, but unfortunately there might be discussions needed in EU as well. What is needed to achieve the strategic autonomy that European Union is developing for itself to protect our own citizens. The decoupling question in the very core doesn't mean to get protectionist or cut all the trade agreements between the different parts of the world. EU wants to remain an open economy system, but with a little bit stronger rules that we have at the moment, more trade tools to be used. But then we have to see how we will build the open strategic autonomy for European Union as well. So how to develop further then the markets together? I very much welcomed what was mentioned before, the more research cooperation. So also joint innovative technology markets amongst the democracies are only possible if we also agree on the standards and rules related to different EDTs. We should also agree ways to step up research cooperation and agree mutually increase our public and R&D spending on some niche technologies that we see vital and important for the future. I was here in the same Cybersec conference a few years ago talking about the 5G, for example, and we have the toolbox, but then we also see that the variation between the member states still exists. So it is important for EU itself to try to be very coherent and more strategic together. At some points it is new, and as previous speaker also mentioned, it is first time we do have common funds to be used on these sectors, and I believe that we will develop that one. But at the same time, as a politician from European Union side, I think I can expect something from the US to see us as a partner and a strategic ally. We would need the US to agree to step to limit some unfair competition position of its digital giants. It is an important first step that would conclude also the digital tax talks in the OECD by this summer as planned. And we would also need to see the US to do more to protect Europeans' data in the USA. I think our citizens would deserve similar protections that are currently being applied for the US authorities to their own citizens. So US needs to understand that as they want to remain strong and favor own companies, EU needs to develop own digital and technological capacities to stand also on our own feet and not becoming protectionist and remain open with the cooperation and allies and with the trade agreement countries. A strong Europe can be a strong international ally. So this is what EU goal for the open strategic autonomy is about.
Thank you very much, Miapetra. Maybe if you have a chance during the Q&A, it would be great also to come back to you on, I know the discussions EU and NATO, but there is also Britain, and what is the role of, in a way, Britain in this whole atmosphere in terms of partnership and creating partnerships, and especially because, I mean, this week the integrated review revealed within the UK that there will be a huge focus on cyber, a huge focus on space and AI, as well as quantum technologies and so on. And I can see some synergies of partnership that could come along in that area. I would like to turn to Deeph Chana now. Deeph, I would like to know a little bit about, like, which areas do you think that we should be focusing more on and why, in a way? Can I turn to you? Thank you.
So we really need to start addressing and get a proper concrete agreement and action on issues such as social justice, and in particular things, open issues such as discrimination. One of the ways we can start making sure that we have a cohesive picture of and agreement of all of this between nations, but also between our academic institutions, industrial institutions, and our governmental institutions, is to promote this idea of triple helix collaboration in security in science and technology development, and that is bringing together those three strands in innovation centers so that they can work more closely with each other and as I said, come to a common understanding of why this kind of values-driven approach is extremely important for our research and development, but also for our technology implementation. Related to this point, I think we also need to make sure that we pursue coherence between large international systems and multinational organizations that put forward aims and targets and goals for humanity to solve global challenges. And this is really important so that we can make sure that our technology investments have coherence and are directed in similar directions. And as an example, what I'll give here is the United Nations Development Goals, which stand many times, I feel, at arm's length from discussions on, say, security and defense in particular. And quite often, I think lip service is being paid to the need for pursuing solutions to those problems in those SDGs rather than action. And so we need a lot more action, and science and technology is a pathway for which that action can be executed. And we really must try and embrace these challenges and do something about them in the next decade, and make sure that all of, as I said, all of these multinational institutions that we have in the world have agreement that we're trying to move towards them. And really, this is then about minimizing the risk of conflict in the world, because if we can solve those problems or move towards solving those problems, we minimize the chances of conflict, as well as addressing what happens when we are in conflict with science and technology. Another point I would just make here as well is that science and technology is often viewed by those who are not actively involved with it as a means to developing technology, period. And this is a popular and I would say somewhat naive understanding of the core reasons for pursuing and undertaking scientific endeavor. And we need to sort of change that mindset a little bit. Quite often you'll hear statements such as X% is funded for science and technology, but only Y% results in technology. And in fact, this is then seen as some sort of failure of science. The reality of the situation is, to me, is that science is vital for the development of objective reasoning around the world and about the world around us. And this is a practice that should be core to democratic processes and decision making. And we need those skill sets within our leadership apparatus, whether it's in industry, whether it's in government or in academia. And so promoting science and scientific education and endeavor is far more about these kind of things than it is just about developing technology. I believe at the moment that politics generally is not as rich in objective reasoning of this manner, of this sort, than it should be. And so this is another area that I think we need to focus on. And to conclude the points I was going to make just now, I was echoing something that someone just said as well just a minute ago. I think the accessibility of data and information is key for delivering equity and opportunity for people around the world. And it's only going to increase in importance as an issue as time moves on. And if we think about it, equity and opportunity is a central tenet of democratic aspirations. And we are currently rapidly commoditizing data and removing that access, which you might argue is really counter to this kind of tenet that we try to deliver in our democracies. And this needs urgent attention. It needs cooperation and collaboration and standards development. And I think what we've just seen over the last 12 months with COVID and the pandemic illustrates even more the need for taking this particular issue seriously and doing something about it. I'll hand back to you at that point now.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to Philip next. Philip, I know that I believe, I guess, that you're going to take us a little bit down on the cyber side of the issues, some of the points that are raised. Can you tell us what is needed, especially in cyberspace, to bolster innovation? And in which areas do you see the need for cooperation in this space? Thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to go ahead and comment on this. We've heard a lot of aspirational themes in talking of the framework of responsible state behavior and getting partners not only within the Transatlantic Partnership, but we need to think more globally. And I'll take an approach that's just a little bit different. I want to have everyone focus on people. We're here in the defense stream, but for the state, future, and business stream, they should also take what I'm going to say as an important thing to focus on. And my sense would be every profession, every organization focusing on the entrepreneurs, the people, the leadership who bring fresh ideas and action to invigorate the Transatlantic Partnership. It could also happen in cyber, but I'll suggest it'll happen in most everything we're going to talk about during this conference. So post-COVID, we've had a major pause with connecting people. I'll suggest to you it's the essential element that we need to go ahead and invigorate moving forward. We need to create cascading opportunities for the best and brightest future leaders to enrich transatlantic cooperative efforts. And I'll even suggest we need to think about this in a global perspective. We must create opportunities for governmental, private industry, academic alignment, for people to meet in person. It's very important. And in doing so, we must make investments in people, in education, and their ability to pause, take time, and think about creative ways to look at how the challenges exist in cybersecurity. We should develop and clarify shared approaches to holding states accountable when they do not act responsibly in cyberspace. And to do that, we must be able to have sustained dialogue. The transatlantic partnership that exists and provides a foundation can lead the world in this effort, but we must work together to do it, and that's going to happen through people. Americans and Europeans must work together to create clear and transparent, meaningful consequences for malicious actors in cyberspace. Brief little discussions in terms of conferences don't give us enough opportunity to have those dialogues. We must invest in people that can have sustained connections to talk through and think about these. How can we do it? Fellowships, internships, exchanges, collaborative projects with innovators looking for and connecting the right people, the future leaders, the best and brightest. But it has a horse blanket element to it as well, where we think about how we connect people in post-COVID. And this isn't going to unwind quickly, but when there's an opportunity to bring not only the transatlantic Europeans and Americans together, I'll suggest we need to expand and open, because the online is the front line. It's affecting global partners, and in strategic competition, the transatlantic partnership can lead that way. So changing the global calculus of people, the interdependencies, the relationships, how can they be improved? Well, education, connecting individuals for projects and activities. Each stream that we're going to talk about in the workshop, state, futures, business, all certainly have a role in this. Institutional capacity building, individual learning and education, every profession has a role, but we have to redouble the efforts to get people connected to have better understandings of culture, how they think about things. I benefited from this as a young man. I went to university in Scotland. I have a sister who also went to university in Europe. She lives in Provence, a brother who started a business in Sweden. And these sustained lifelong partnerships happen through education and early connection. The EU Erasmus program is excellent. It's an incubator and gets people connected today. In France and Germany, the connectings of cities. My young nephew came to Bavaria here to go to school for a bit of time. We must redouble these efforts to be brighter and bolder, to think about how do we get younger people together to think about the challenges in cyberspace. And then this is my challenge to this transatlantic audience, is we have to be thinking about how we do this globally, because we have a leadership role and a commitment to bring our values, to share them, to provide opportunities to others. And our countries have done this really well in the last 70 years. But how do we do it in the cyber domain? It's hard. You've all experienced this. So as moving forward, I'll challenge everyone in each of the streams to think about what are the unique roles that you can take as a leader to identify the best and brightest, go send them someplace else to learn and collaborate. Yes, this will be expensive. You want those people here. But when the opportunity avails itself for us to connect people, we must do it. Institutional capacity building, individual learning and excellence and sharing experiences, we should think about it now. We have a time to do it. When the opportunity allows us for connecting, let's grasp it to solve problems that we want to address today. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Philip. I think you took us to a very bright side of the issue, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn to Marta now. Some of the issues that are highlighted by other speakers point out to the fact of issues that are related to autonomy, digital sovereignty, or like independence, what type of strategic independence that we're talking about. Could you talk us a little bit about the differences between these concepts in a way? And we have been bringing the academic view, and you come from the corporate sector. So how can you actually, kind of match these two views together? Or what type of views exist in academia and corporate sector over these concepts? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for all the views that are shared. It's usually difficult to come in as a last. So many great thoughts have been shared already. What I'd like to start with is to just know that the last year has really tested the resilience of societies, businesses, but also the strength of the relationships that we're talking about today. And I think the most important news, and something that gives us all a lot of hope, is the fact that there is a shared commitment and shared awareness of the need that 2021 should bring a renewed focus on the transatlantic partnership, and the one that would really include a robust shared digital agenda. So I think that's very optimistic for the start. When it comes to Google, I think whole industry, we also want to play a role in re-energizing that transatlantic relationships and and we're all looking forward to what's around the corner. When it comes to specific concepts that you mentioned, there is indeed a difficulty to tell between various political concepts. There is a big offer now of contexts they can be used in. We hear a lot about strategic autonomy, we hear a lot about digital sovereignty, but we also hear about open strategic autonomy. We also hear about strategic interdependence, where I think the last one resonates with us most. And even when digital sovereignty is discussed and strategic autonomy is discussed, these concepts are used by different understanding. We do not have one agreed upon definition, and we see different uses. I'll give you an example. In the past 3 weeks, we saw different letters coming from different member states sent to the European Commission that were coming from the same diagnosis. That is, Europe should be building its digital resilience, its digital strength, with the use of different tones and with the use of how these different approaches would be welcoming non-EU partners. And I think these nuances matter at this point when political decisions are to be made, and I think it's going to still take us a while to arrive definitions. I think what's also important to note is that although this discussion is happening under the transatlantic umbrella, we see a lot of readiness on the European side. We see all these different discussions and debates happening on the European side. I literally was talking to my team yesterday that every week there is a conference or a discussion in Europe where these concepts are discussed. And it feels like the US side, since the US government is just in transition with a lot of appointments not yet being in office, the feedback is not known yet. So I think the big next step that will inform is this debate will be the input from the European side. But we all hear and read that this should be expected sometime soon. The debate around sovereignty is a fundamental one. because the questions behind it range from what do we want the internet of the future to look like, to what values will we like the internet to be shaped on, to should countries work individually or together to help shape the future. And I think, again, we've got strong grounds to base this discussion on, which is the fact that the EU and the US share common values as well as goals around the development of technology and should work together to set common standards and jointly form technological leadership. Privacy is a good example, and it's an area where there is an urgent need for the EU and the US to come to a solution, and that has been previously mentioned. So we'll be also seeing more and more cases where the EU and the US should walk the talk about finding agreements, about finding solutions. And I think when it comes to corporate definitions, I think first and foremost, as Google, we embrace our obligation to ensure that products we engineer respect the values that I highlighted, that they are safe, secure, transparent for our users, customers, and partners on both sides of the Atlantic. And that's why I think there is a lot of excitement and interest in the establishment of the upcoming EU-US Trade and Technology Council that could be a platform where those issues would be shaped and discussed. And I think there are, again, a lot of open questions. What should be the format for it? How wide should it be? What's the role of third-party countries that also belong to the community of democracies that do not fall either into EU or the US? One thing for today's world, we do need places to discuss critical proposals that will shape the future of our increasingly digital economies. On the European side today, we're discussing Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act. We know that both will have direct consequences on the economic recovery of the EU and the ability of all businesses to benefit from digital technologies. Now, more than ever, we need to focus not on how to limit innovation by a few companies, but on how the full range of digital tools available can contribute to the recovery and future economic success of all enterprises, large and small, again, on the both sides of the Atlantic. And the key to this, in these challenging times, people will be asking more and not less from technology, and both companies and governments should, at the end of the day, deliver on that. Why should we further build on the transatlantic digital bonds? A lot has been said already when thinking about external parties that also affect the world of the technology, but looking more inwards, already today, 75% of digital content is produced either in Europe or in the United States, and data flows between these two regions are the largest globally. No other two regions in the world are as digitally integrated as Europe and the US. Europe is the top-ranked exporter to the US of digitally enabled services, and the US is the top exporter of digitally enabled services to Europe. There is a lot to build together, and it's a critical time to make that happen. Currently, the integration of our digital ecosystems enables more than $3.75 billion in goods and services that are traded across the Atlantic each day. It's a massive scale because we very often talk about too much of the US tech in Europe, while this exchange is actually very mutual, I think. And coming back to various definitions for autonomy, for sovereignty, I think there will be always one common ground and a common belief that it's in the best interest of the US to have Europe as a strong technological partner. It is in the best interest of the US to help Europe build its digital resilience, to jointly operate and maneuver in the world of a lot of different challenges. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Marta. We have around 10 minutes left only for the discussion in a way to get heated up, I would say. I would like to have some questions from the audience as well. So if the audience has any questions, please send it over so that I think, Michelle, you can read them through.
Yes, I can see already we have 2 questions from the audience, so I'll read them all together and then pass to you to give them to specific speakers. The question number 1 is, what is the biggest challenge in protecting our values in cyberspace? Applying rules, enforcing responsibility, or maybe reaching consensus? The second question, as DSG Joanna mentioned earlier, bureaucracy is one of the biggest obstacles when regulating technologies. How can we fix that issue while still maintaining the highest standards? Where is the balance? Okay, thank you very much. So I would like to start with the second question, if I may, and that's directed to Joanneke. The question about bureaucracy. And then we can come back to the cyber question that I think all of the speakers in here would be really well suited to respond. Please go ahead, John. Joanneke, can you hear me? I'm just waiting for Joanneke to start speaking, but can we just take the link from Philip and pin it to Joanne, please?
Can I?
Perfect. Yes, now it's coming.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's one. Of course, the bureaucracy is an obstacle. It's even I wouldn't call it the bureaucracy is an obstacle. The difficult thing is within the European Union, you have all those different stakeholders. So, and especially in the digital and technology and cyberspace regulations, you have to deal with the 27 member states, and that's in this field also the difficulty. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's only bureaucracies; it's also the cooperation between us. But what I would say is that it's already amazing if you look at the specific area of cybersecurity and the cybersecurity strategy that we adopted last year, that we've come a long way and we're there. If you would have asked, for example, 3 years ago that we as an EU would have cyber sanctions in place to deter malicious actors, I wouldn't have believed you, and we did. So I think because of the current challenges, we need to act and to cooperate, and so the need is there also to overcome the obstacles and also the obstacles of bureaucracies.
Thank you very much. I would like to turn to the cyber question. What is the biggest challenge in the cyberspace? I can see all the speakers right now. Who would like to answer that question? If you can just raise your hand, I can just turn to you. Yes, please, go ahead. Yes. Miapetra wants to answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please Thank you. I want to take something up. I appreciate professors also to take the people on board, and I feel very strong for that. It is much of the culture we create in the society for the data sharing, but also for the cybersecurity. It depends on each user whether you use the so the questions need to be there, and we need a debate among the citizens also to note that. But I would like to raise up one problem that we see now, and I talk a lot in the parliament, what is a threat to societies and threat to democracies is these state and non-state actors, the malicious actors who do the kind of hybrid attacks when they try to feed the insecurity in the society, whether it's anti-vaccine, whether it's anti-5G, anti-EU, anti-homos, whatever you challenge and make society first unsecure and then divided. And I see that these kind of actions are not in our values when the means is and the aim is to break the society. And there I see the challenge that at the moment the clicking business models on the many internet platforms, that you get more user time when you have shocking content on terrorism, on whatever shocking news or fake news even, you get more clicks because then you get more advertisement. So this is a profound question we have to tackle, and that is for me the biggest challenge, that we should talk together with the big tech like Google and Facebook and others, really to save our democracies from this kind of bad clicking business models.
Perfect. Yes, Deeph, please go ahead.
I think the question.
Please unmute yourself. Oh, great. Coming. Yeah.
Yes,
go
maybe
ahead.
you can hear me now. So a bit of a lag. I think there were two challenges in the questions. I think reaching consensus is a huge issue. And just to pick up on what the last speaker said, one of the biggest issues that I think we're going to face in a sort of in the sort of cyber domain is the disinformation and misinformation issue and the problem. And we can already see that manifesting itself over the last 24 months in quite a significant way, and that's going to continue. So the inability of individuals and people to be able to differentiate the truth from fiction, and occasionally sometimes that is being driven by organized disinformation campaigns, and sometimes it's just the spread of misinformation, misunderstanding that causes this to happen. This is something that we have to really address. It definitely requires a collaboration and a close connection with the digital providers, if you like, the industrial providers of digital systems and governments. But it also means that that we have to examine the relationship between the individual, the state, and corporations and the corporate complex, digital complex, because I think we don't necessarily have a very clear understanding of where the kind of power shift should lie, or the responsibility should lie for things like cybersecurity. It's quite transient, and it's different from region to region, and that's where I think the consensus issue rears its head, because I'm not sure we have consensus on exactly what the roles and responsibilities of those different entities should be. And for me, the corporate responsibility issue is something which you can see, I mean, it's playing out internationally right now. People are very unsure about exactly how far to go with this, what it should look like, how to codify it, etc. And this is a big challenge in terms of achieving good cybersecurity. I think also, whilst we're having that debate amongst ourselves, going back to my point about digital equity, if we're not able to provide equity and opportunity globally for digital services, and we create economies in the future that are sort of enclaves where all the data and the digital infrastructure exists, then guess what? Those enclaves are going to get attacked by people who feel they're left out of those systems. So inclusivity in digital systems globally is a very important thing too. I will hand back to you on that. With that.
Perfect. I think one more point to add into this on misinformation and disinformation campaigns is the resilience of the public and the individuals who are involved in it to identify and detect misinformation and disinformation. Philip, I saw that you raised your hand. I also have one more question before we close off the session, so I'll turn to you, Philip, and then we can go back to that question.
Well, just briefly, I'd ask everyone to consider every profession needs to embrace cybersecurity as a fundamental foundation and cornerstone moving forward, but just not only on the technical, but policy and strategy aspects of cybersecurity. Information certainly is nested in this, but every profession should own cybersecurity and elevate it to an executive level discussion and opportunity to move forward to best train, educate, and certify their constituency. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have one question and I have 1 minute. The question is something that came out from Miapetra and Marta in a way on the privacy related issues that was tackled. It's on the privacy and digital sovereignty and challenges that we see between EU and United States. Where do you see the biggest bottleneck in this area? Is it about like the legal issues that we are facing in terms of privacy, adequacy rights, and so on, or is it more political? And what type of quick fixes? I'm not asking about this long-term solutions that needs to be put through for the legal sense, but like what type of quick fixes that you see that could be applied in this area? Anyone would like to take that question? Is it a hard one? Marta, I see. Yeah.
I'm happy to just briefly, I'm very briefly jumping on how to resolve bottlenecks and quick fixes. And I think the big elephant in the room is that the technological dialogue had been affected for 4 years by the weakness of the Transatlantic dialogue. And I think we are starting the process of quick fixes. Like the dialogue is restarting, talking about and agreeing on what are the shared values and goals are kicking off. I literally think it's a matter of I would say months, definitely not years, when the most critical issues need to be debated. I think politics plays an important role, but politics understood in a broader sense, as in we all as stakeholders in this process play a role to talk about priorities, to talk about most important things to keep on the back of our minds when agreements are in place, but to also factor in something I talked about, the upcoming need for economic recovery. What is the role that digital economy could play? And I think all of us could be coming in with different aspects, but the quick fix is to listen to various stakeholders groups and arrive at solution ASAP, because this is what is expected also from the world of technology on the economic recovery side.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Marta. I think we are now 1 minute ahead. Okay, go ahead, Miapetra. Yeah, go ahead. And then I'll close up the session.
Well, follow the privacy shield, how to come over, because we know this is the interdependency. We are really much linked on our data flows, and Europe targets and wants to remain open data continent. We don't want to get isolated. I do chair the European Parliament monitoring on the e-commerce negotiations with 86 countries at the moment. But on the privacy, it is not just Europeans who love their privacy online. Also Americans do, Japanese do, New Zealanders do. So we have GDPR, and we wish that US could then also respect it. And as Americans have the privacy rules, we all just calling now that also Europeans would have the similar treatment, that our privacy is respected also in US. And I hope that the privacy shield will be quick fix, but then on the longer run, we could create a more common understanding and trust on many legislative files, also on the privacy to be a little bit closer each other, the way we protect it.
Thank you very much. I think we had a brilliant session today. One of the issues I think that we didn't discuss, and probably for a long-term discussion, is about inclusivity. Inclusivity meaning incorporating not only Transatlantic Alliance and EU, NATO, but also be able to incorporate actors that are not the usual suspects into the technology discussion, the neighboring countries within Europe, for instance, because whenever we are going to build standards and norms and rules in this area, we will be talking to these actors and states in the long run. So it would be good to incorporate them into the discussion from the very beginning. I would like to thank all the speakers who joined me to this session, and also the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beyza, and thank you all for a tremendous discussion and your very apt comments.